YouTube, hey there, it's Casey Dim at TaxSaleAcademy.com. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of the Tax Sale Podcast. If you enjoy podcasts, make sure you check us out. There's a link down below. It'll take you to TaxSalePodcast.com where you can download us on your favorite podcasting platform and you can listen on the go. Now, if YouTube is more of your style, that's fine. Just sit tight and let me know by clicking that thumbs up button. All right, let's go ahead and record the audio portion of the podcast right now. Welcome to the Tax Sale Podcast, where tax sale investing is made easy. My name is Casey Dimon. I'm a tax sale veteran. I'm the leading tax sale expert. I'm the author of the Tax Sale Playbook, founder of the Tax Sale Academy, and I am your host right here on the Tax Sale Podcast. Thank you so much for joining me on today's podcast episode. This is a completely free podcast and is brought to you through and because of the Tax Sale Academy. If you are looking to learn more about investing in tax-defaulted real estate, just head on over to TaxSaleAcademy.com. Again, that's TaxSaleAcademy.com. All right, on today's podcast episode, I want to discuss the first steps. I will commonly get questions about where somebody should begin. And many of those asking these types of questions, of course, are brand new tax sale investors. They're interested in the tax sale business, but they have no idea where to start. Now, everybody has to start somewhere, so that is perfectly acceptable. Now, in today's episode, what I want to do is lay out a 5-step process to getting started in the tax sale business. Now, if you so choose, I've got training videos with many more details on each one of these steps. These videos are over on YouTube, and you can simply use the search bar to search for related topics. Likewise, I have podcast episodes right here on my podcast related to a lot of these topics. And of course, we get into much, much greater detail inside the Tax Sale Academy. All right, the first part of the process is familiarization. This is your general learning phase. This is also something that many people will tend to skip for whatever reason. When you're planning to, say, travel somewhere new, you're probably going to research it. When you're planning to buy a vehicle, to buy a boat, a new house, whatever it is, you probably take some time to become familiar with whatever it is you're buying. Tax sale investing should be treated the same exact way. The worst approach to this business to hear about is somebody that goes out, seeks out a list immediately after hearing about what a tax lien or tax deed is. They buy a property, and then after the fact, they decide they probably should figure out what they did wrong because they lost money. I hear this every single day. People jump headfirst into this business. They find out about a tax lien or a tax deed, get a list, buy a property within a 2 or 3 day period, and it always ends up bad. Take the time to learn the different processes. Learn the details. What's a tax deed? What's a tax lien? A redeemable deed? What's a hybrid state? Why are these properties even here to begin with? What are some of the traps and the pitfalls of this business? How can you get the best properties? What approaches will work best to you? Ask yourself all this stuff and more. So once you learn all that stuff, the surface level type stuff, then dig in a little bit deeper. Look at things like title clouds and learn how to deal with them. Go deeper and deeper on your learning until you're confident with what you're doing. And once you have an idea of what you are doing, then we can start to dial in your approach just a little bit more. Maybe you make the decision that you want to invest in tax deed states only. My suggestion is go to our state guide, which is linked in today's show notes. Learn about the different tax deed states, and then figure out which one might work best for you. And by the way, you don't need to select just one. You can come back and tweak this and add others as you go. All this, of course, can also be learned through the numerous trainings that I offer through YouTube, this podcast, and the Academy. I have lots and lots of trainings on learning about this business and all the other details that we're about to get into. Now, after you've learned about this business on a surface level, maybe a little bit of a deeper level, it's time to learn the laws and the processes that are used in the areas where you might want to invest in. And again, this should be very, very fluid. Just as a side note here, if a state's laws, if a state's process, or the timeline, whatever it is, if it does not work for you, no problem. Just change states. The internet has made it more than possible to invest in any area that we choose. So don't let the specific location matter too much. Don't get hung up on it. All right, let's touch on the laws now. Every single state in the country is different when it comes to their tax foreclosure system. Each state has a set of laws that will apply to the tax delinquent properties and ultimately to us as tax sale investors. These laws are often hidden in state statutes, and there are going to be pages of small font spelling out the entire process in a rather boring fashion. The biggest piece of advice that I have that I can give you when it comes to this, when it comes to learning about a particular state, is to take the time to read those laws. Do some searching around online. Find the state statutes that are relevant to tax sale investors in whatever state you're interested in investing in. These are literally the words that allow our businesses to exist as tax sale investors. Without these laws, we do not exist. This business does not exist. Tax sales do not exist. These are the instructions to operate our business from the legal standpoint. Can you start without reading these laws? Absolutely. Of course. People do it all the time. But sooner or later, your lack of attention to these laws is going to cost you substantially. Now, when it comes to the process, I'm talking about how each one of the individual counties will operate. Sure, the state laws, they are the basis for this business, and they're the basis that the counties must operate from. But on a practical side, we need to know the local area's specific processes, their customs, their traditions. How do they handle things? What exactly do they do? The state statute might say that the county must sell tax liens after the taxes are late. But how? How are they sold? Are they sold online, in person, mail-in bids, proxy bids? Do they require a deposit? How do you register? When are these sales? How do they operate specifically? There are going to be substantial differences between counties, even if they're in the same state. So navigate to the county office that handles the sales, which you should have learned about when you read up on the state's laws. From there, go to the page on their website that is related to tax sales. Read every single page, every single line thoroughly, multiple times if needed, until you have a solid grasp on how they specifically operate their tax sales. Now, after you become familiar with the business, with the state's laws, and with the local area's processes, then it's time to start looking for a list. And this is something that many new investors tend to exaggerate the difficulty of. Obtaining a tax sale list is likely going to be one of the easiest things in this business. Go back to the tax sale related site that we just discussed, and the list is probably posted on there. If it's not, call them or email them. Email that department responsible for the tax sales in that area and ask them how you get your hands on a list. It's going to be public record, and 99% of the time they're completely free. Now there's a very, very small percentage, that 1% in very rural counties that might charge you like a nominal fax fee or, I don't know, $1 to mail you the list or something like that. But most counties will post their list online now. So once you have that list, it's going to be time to scan over a few times to make sure you can afford to invest in that area. And then, of course, we have to start researching that list. Now, I have probably more than 200 research-related videos on my YouTube channel and dozens of hours of training on this topic inside the Tax Sale Academy. To think that I can tell you everything you need to know about research in just a few sentences is naive at best. But I'm going to provide two key pieces of help for you when it comes to research. The first is that your results will be directly related to the quality of your research. Do not rely on anything from anywhere, including the county office or the auction company, without verifying that information yourself, without doing your own research. If somebody shows you a picture of the property like an auction company, you almost need to treat it like that photo does not exist, because they don't guarantee what they're selling you is what is pictured. They are only selling you the legally described real estate. So it is your responsibility to know what is on that legally described real estate. And all this, of course, implies that you must know how to research. So take the time to learn this extremely important step. Now, the second piece of advice that I have when it comes to research is something that an auctioneer who has been in this business even longer than I have says at every single auction. And it's very simple, and he says it very sternly. Know what you're bidding on. The more you know about what you are bidding on, the more successful you will be as an investor. Now, there will definitely be some things that you might not know about. We don't know if the property has a refrigerator that works or if the toilet leaks, right? We don't know that stuff. But we must know absolutely everything that we can possibly know about that property. The more you know, the more informed you will be when it comes to making that investment. And the more successful that investment will likely be for you. So know what you are bidding on. All right, the next part of the process is to attend an auction. And I always recommend that you go to your first auction as a practice auction. Go ahead, research those properties, determine your maximum bid amounts, plan out a strategy in your head, and then just sit there and hold all that information to yourself. Go to the auction and see what could have happened. Watch and learn all about the process. If it's an in-person auction, that's fantastic. Take the time to talk to other investors. Ask questions. Listen to other people talking and asking questions of the auctioneer. Get comfortable with the process. And then track those winning bids. Determine if your bids would have been winners or not. Determine if you might have overlooked some properties that seem to be extremely popular. And if you want to take it a step farther, research some of the winning bidders. It's all public record. You can learn about this business simply by watching others and then taking bits and pieces of their approaches and forming your own approach. If there's a big shot that seems to be buying everything, don't get upset. Instead, take the time to see what you can learn from them. Going to an auction with the sole intention to learn can be such a rewarding experience. You will actually learn, but most importantly, you'll be able to do it in a very relaxed manner. You'll learn by being there, by being in the action, becoming comfortable with the process. So many people put pressure on themselves to buy a property at their very first auction when they probably shouldn't. They force themselves into an investment that might just be a lousy investment. Do not do this to yourself. The last part of the process, provided you did everything up to this point thoroughly, is to pull the trigger and buy a property. Make your first investment. Now, whether it's a tax lien or a tax deed, I always suggest that you start with a small and simple transaction. Don't drop your life savings into something right out of the gate. And don't go out there and try to get super creative as a way to beat the system or something. If you're buying a lien, consider buying just one lien that pays a good rate at a good price. If you're buying a deed, consider buying a simple vacant building lot or your traditional single-family home, your cookie-cutter house. Start simple. Those first few transactions, you'll likely learn quite a bit more about this business that you weren't previously familiar with. So start small and allow the process itself to help educate you. So those are the steps to take when you're first getting started in this business. Familiarize yourself with the tax sale process. Then take your learning a little bit deeper. Dial it in on the different states, the different areas that you want to invest in, and learn about those. Then locate, review, and research a tax sale list. Go to an auction solely to practice. And finally, when you've done all that, and you're comfortable, and you're confident, and you're knowledgeable with what you're doing, that is a time to go ahead and pull the trigger on a small, simple deal to get started. I truly hope that you've enjoyed this podcast episode and how I've laid out the steps to take when you're first getting started. As a reminder, we offer more tax sale training than anybody else in the world, and much of it, like this podcast, is completely free. All that we ask is if you do enjoy this podcast, please take a few seconds out of your day to leave us a positive review on whatever podcasting platform you're listening to us on. And if we can help you in a much more detailed, step-by-step manner with all things tax sale investing, just head on over to TaxSaleAcademy.com, click on join, and become a member of the Academy. Hey, take care, folks, and we'll see you next time right here on the Tax Sale Podcast.